we're back again. This is the third video of the day, and this one is essentially you're going to be looking up stuff for me in your textbook. I do hope you have some version of Rubin and Babbie, and because that's very much where this lecture comes from. Although I always tell people, read any social work research textbook, and you're probably going to get much of the same stuff, and it becomes much more intelligible. You understand it a lot better if you read it or hear it from different voices. My voice, my interpretation on this is just mine, and I have to tell you, there's some heavy bias to it. Primarily, the approach we're going to be taking is a quantitative approach, although you're going to learn about qualitative research. There is a great difference between the two. You can expect a final exam question about the differences between these two things, but do not worry about your final exam right now. Let's just continue. If any of you have read any social work research textbook, perhaps in your undergraduate or your master's degree studies, you found that our history with research as social workers was somewhat rocky. It turns out that our earliest researchers evaluated general social work practice and found that they could not justify the profession as effective in what it was doing in clinical work. These findings led other professionals to diss us, and even other social workers didn't really think that what we did was particularly valuable. The general perception of social work they tended not to be that we didn't especially matter. We weren't able to measure any kind of change in the people that we saw. So the next generation of social workers, and you should really find the history and find out what years we're talking about, just for your own personal edification. The next generation of social workers did some changing in the way they did it. They measured very specific things so that they measured outcomes that they could count, wellness in ways that you could measure it, and this changed things. Of course, now all of a sudden we're valuable. Now all of a sudden we know what we're doing, and social work is an effective profession. Our interventions are effective. The way we did it was we were able to define what we did and to observe what we wanted to observe, what we hoped to find, and we learned that our effectiveness was based on was also colored by the characteristics of the client, age, gender, race, and socioeconomics, and also the experience of the social worker. More experienced social workers were more effective. Surprise, surprise. And the way that the social worker did his or her work, hence the push to codify treatment and to teach social work methods by manuals, by the book, just like the psychologists tend to want to do. Engage in research of treatment interventions, and training other clinicians to use manuals and to standardize therapy to do it exactly the same way. We may find this a very cold way of working with people, but actually it's if a standardized treatment is found to be effective, and you don't do it that way, then you could be liable for bad results if a person, for example, suicides or hurts somebody else. The more standardized a therapy, in other words, the more it can be regarded as reliable. If everyone does therapy the same way, then how the clinician performs the treatment, not the treatment itself, is the confounding variable that needs to be taken out of the equation. For example, if I say I'm doing EMDR, rapid eye movement kind of hocus pocus hypnosis that tends to work. I'm not dissing EMDR. And what I do with a subject is effective using this hypnotic technique, and somebody is observing my work, they may say, well, EMDR is effective, but somebody else who uses EMDR might not be effective. And then they're going to say, well, obviously Friedman is the one who's effective. It's her style, it's the way she did it that's effective, not the hypnosis itself. So in clinical research, we can take apart how the treatment is performed, and whether or not it is the therapist doing it, whether or not it's the treatment itself. These things actually matter, and they help us to determine whether or not what we're doing is worthwhile. Okay, I'm going to stop it again because of the time.